Hi there. So we are at part 1 of the OpenR and IBM Netezza setup that will enable us to build an analytical and predictive data processing platform in our PC. So before we dive into the details, let's quickly look at the reference architecture of our setup and get an understanding of what we are trying to achieve. So I have pulled up my blog at theanalyticsuniverse.com. This is a blog on predictive analytics deploying R on Netezza. So this has a reference architecture diagram which I'm going to use for the explanation. So let's assume that this particular rectangle over here is our Netezza appliance. Now the Netezza appliance is basically a relational database engine which is having a specialized hardware that is optimized for running analytics. Now this appliance consists of different components. The first is the Netezza host. So this particular orange rectangle over here is our Netezza host. So all incoming database requests, they always come to the Netezza host. And the Netezza host is going to take that request and distribute that amongst all of the SPUs that are available to the appliance. Now, the SPUs are called the snippet processing units, and each of the SPUs have its own CPU, memory, FPGAs, which are field programmable gate arrays, and their own disks. These blue boxes over here are the SPUs, and these are actually the workhorses of the appliance. So always remember, whenever we create any table in the Netezza database, they are always distributed amongst all of the available SPUs available to the appliance. And whenever a work request comes to the Netezza host, it distributes that work request to each of the SPUs. Now each of these SPUs will work on the data that is present in them and will use their own CPUs, FPGAs and memory to process the data. That is the reason Netezza is called a shared nothing or a parallel processing architecture, because it is processing the data in parallel to the other SPUs, and it's called shared nothing because it does not share any resources with other SPUs. Each SPU has its own resources. So once each of the SPUs are done doing their work, they will send it back to the host, which then merges the results and sends it back to the client. So this is the Netezza appliance and how that works. So now over here you see these pink rectangles over here. These are called INZA, or the Netezza analytics. The Netezza analytics are a collection of database stored procedures and functions that are purpose built for performing various data science operations. So it could be data engineering, like data imputations. It could be scaling data. So it has a lot of useful stored procedures with which you can do advanced data engineering without having to write your own code. It also has various algorithms which you can use, which you can run, and once you run these algorithms, you can generate various models which are again stored in the Netezza database. And then there are also stored procedures through which you can use these models and make predictions on your future data sets. So the emulator that we will be installing will already be having these installed, the INZs installed, but remember, in a production Netezza environment, you have to separately install the INZA packages. Once we have the emulator, we are going to install R on the SPU and each of the we will install R in the Netezza host and each of the SPUs available to the system. So once we are done with this setup, we will install R Studio in our PC, and we will also install base R in our PC, which is having the same level of R as we installed in the emulator. So if you consider this big rectangle as a desktop environment, this smaller rectangle as our emulator, and then inside the desktop, our desktop, we have R Studio and base R, and we will use OpenR Studio and communicate to the Netezza emulator and push our jobs from the R Studio to the appliance. Along with that, we will also install some housekeeping tools. We will install the IBM's administrator tool, because that's going to help us in looking at like how does the hardware look in the appliance and the emulator, how many tables are there, things like that. And we shall also install WinSCP, which will help us to FTP files from our laptop into the emulator. So that's the reference architecture of the setup that we will be using. And over here, in this notepad, I have a list of steps that we need to perform to build the whole environment. So remember, we are just not installing the emulator, we are installing R, and we are installing all the other add-ons that will give you a real feel of how a production and predictive analytics data processing platform would look like. So that being said, let's get started with the first steps. Okay, so we are at the first steps in the setup. So let's spend about a minute discussing the hardware configuration of the PC that is recommended. So the PC that I'm using, the laptop that I'm using for the demonstration has 32 GB of memory, which is really nice to have if you are playing around with big data virtual images. But for the emulator, having an 8 GB minimum RAM is required. The documentation says that you must have about 4 GB of minimum RAM. So if you have 6 GB, it's really sort of, you really can't run other things. Things may hang. So having 8 GB minimum is required. I'm using a Windows 64-bit, Windows 7 Professional, and well, that's about it. And before you set the emulator, make sure that you enable virtualization of in your PC. Sometimes if the virtualization is not set, you will not be able to use VMware. You will have troubles. So the way to do is, if you go to the BIOS settings, depending on the make of your laptop or PCs, you just need to go to the BIOS and enable the virtualization. So that's all that is required to get started. So the first thing that we are going to do is install the WinSCP. So as I told you, the WinSCP is a tool that will help us with FTP files to the appliance. So what we will do is we will go to Google and we will type WinSCP. Oh, this is really slow. Okay, so what you do is you go to the WinSCP site over here. to go to the download page. Let's go to download. Go to the installation package. And let's wait for the download to start. Okay, sorry guys, the place where I was sitting, the internet connection was really slow. So hopefully things will be faster. So the download has completed. So if I go to my downloads over here, you can see this. Let's copy this over here. Let's create a directory over here. Let's call it WinSCP. Okay, let's go here and paste this, and now let's install the WinSCP. Do a typical installation. Okay, so the installation is complete. So this is what the WinSCP looks like. So this is something with which you can FTP files. So if you open it over here, you give the host name and other things. So I will tell you later what we do with this, but this is the first step. So we got the first step of the housekeeping taken care of. We have installed WinSCP. So now we will go and install the Netezza administration tool. So what we will do is, let's exit out of here. Let's go to Google. No, we will go to http .ibm.com support fix central. Okay, so we'll go over here, http www.933.ibm.com/support/fix central. So you actually will need an IBM user ID and password to get into this. So all you need is just create a free account. and then you should be able to sign in. So over here, when you see the find the product over here, in the product group over here, product selector, so go to select product, okay, and in the product group you mention information management. So it's over here, information management, okay, and then over here you say mention IBM Netezza So in the select from information management, you mention IBM Netezza NPS software and clients. Okay, and the install version would be 7.2.1. Okay, and over here you say Linux. No, in fact you say Windows because we are looking for the client, right? And then say continue. Okay, so you say browse for fixes and continue. So over here if you see, it says this download contains the IBM Netezza platform software releases, and also it includes the software support tools, the ODBC, JDBC, .NET and OLEDB drivers as well. Okay, so let's select this one over here. Okay, alright, and then you basically download using the browser. Okay, so let's start the download and we'll be back once the download completes. Okay, so one thing I had forgotten to mention is when you hit the download button, you get into a screen where you have all of these products to install, right? So you definitely will want to know which one to install. So what we're going to do over here is we will select the NZ Win client. Okay, so this is Win means the Windows, so we want the Windows client installed. So we will click this and start the download. Okay, so the download has started and we'll be back when the download completes. Okay, so the download has completed. So if I go to downloads, I see the client over here. So let's copy this and in our documents let's create a directory and call it Netezza admin client, and let's paste it over here and let's extract it. So once I extract it, you see these different drivers, right? So you see that folder called drivers. It has all the drivers. We will come to this later. It has documentation. It has all the documents over here. So there's an advanced administration guide and ODBC guide and database users guide and so forth. Okay, and also we have admin. So we'll go to admin and we will click on the NZ setup, which will install the Netezza admin tool for us. So let's get that going. IBM Netezza administration tools English. Okay, we will say next. Let everything be default. So we'll say next. We want the GUI admin tool. We want the utilities as well as the documentation. So again, let everything be checked and say next, and now you click install. Okay, that's done. So congratulations, the IBM Netezza tools has been successfully installed. So we close out of here. And now if I go over here to start and all programs, I see the IBM Netezza folder, and this is my IBM Netezza administrator. So let's click here and see how it looks. Okay, so this is going to tell us, this is going to pop up a dialog box which is going to ask us the host name, the user ID and password to log into the Netezza database. Since we do not have any Netezza appliance or any Netezza database installed in our PC, we cannot really use it, but we will come back to this later. So we have again, so we have got the second step done, which is the Netezza administration tool, which we have got it installed. So now the third step will be to install a virtualization software.